My parents had always favored my sister's children, though I tried for years to pretend it wasn't true. They called them special, golden, and destined for great things, as if my own kids were invisible shadows hovering on the edges of family photographs. For a long time, I told myself it was harmless. Some grandparents are just closer to one set of grandkids, right? I convinced myself to swallow the lump in my throat and not make waves. But the incident that shattered everything happened the summer we all went to my parents' lake house. The lake house was meant to be neutral territory, a haven for family gatherings, fishing trips, barbecues, and late-night stories on the porch. It was my father's pride, something he'd worked his whole life to afford. For family memories, he always said, I wanted my kids, Eli, who was 10, and Sophie, who was 7, to have those same memories etched into their childhoods. I wanted them to feel as though they belonged, that they were cherished just as much as their cousins. When we pulled up to the house, my sister, Claire, was already there with her husband, Aaron, and their 2 kids, Mason and Emily. My parents bustled out of the front door, arms wide and voices high with delight. Except, of course, the delight wasn't for us. Look at my golden boy. My mother squealed, sweeping Mason into a hug so fierce it looked like she might never let go. He was 12, lanky, and already wore the quiet confidence of someone who'd been told all his life that he was extraordinary. Emily, at 9, had the same glow about her, Grandma and Grandpa's shining star. My kids hung back beside me, their excitement dimming as they realized who the fanfare was for. I bent down, kissed their heads, and whispered, "Don't worry. Grandma and Grandpa love you too." But even as I said it, a heaviness tugged at my heart. Inside, my parents announced that they had made special sleeping arrangements this year. They clapped their hands like they were revealing a prize on a game show. Mason and Emily will be upstairs in the guest rooms, my father declared, where they can have their own space. The 2 of you, he gestured to me and Claire, will be downstairs with the kids in the bunk room and the pull-out couches. Wait, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. So Eli and Sophie will be downstairs too. My mother gave me a patient smile, the kind reserved for someone who just didn't understand. Well, yes, of course. It only makes sense. The golden grandchildren deserve the upstairs. They're older, they need privacy, and besides, they've earned it with how well they're doing. Mason's top of his class, you know. Emily is excelling in dance competitions. I glanced at Eli, whose face had gone blank, and at Sophie, who was twisting her fingers together, blinking fast. My kids were good kids. Eli loved building robots from scrap parts, Sophie spent hours drawing fantastical worlds with crayons and paper. But none of that ever seemed to count to my parents. They're children, I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. All of them. Don't you think it would be fair to rotate the rooms, or maybe let them all share the space? Claire smirked, her arm draped around Mason's shoulders. It's just a room, Anna. Don't make a big deal out of it. But it was more than a room. It was the message behind it, the constant, exhausting reminder that my kids were somehow less in the eyes of the people who should have loved them unconditionally. We went downstairs. The basement smelled faintly of mildew, though my parents insisted it was cozy. The bunk beds creaked, and the pull-out couch had a sagging mattress that nearly touched the floor. Eli and Sophie set their bags down silently, avoiding my eyes. That night, I lay awake listening to Sophie sniffle quietly into her pillow. When I reached over and stroked her hair, she whispered, "Why do Grandma and Grandpa like Mason and Emily more than us?" The question sliced through me. I wanted to lie, to tell her it wasn't true, but she was old enough to see the truth for herself. "It's not that they love you less," I murmured, though the words tasted like ash. "Sometimes people forget how special others are because they're too busy looking at the obvious. But you and Eli are amazing. And I see it. Dad sees it. Don't ever think you're not enough." She nodded, but I knew my reassurance couldn't erase what she felt. The next few days were a parade of small humiliations. My parents praised Mason for catching a fish, though Eli had caught one too, slightly smaller, but still unnatural. My father boomed about Mason. Eli's catch barely got a nod. When Sophie showed Grandma her drawing of the lake, she got a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before Grandma rushed off to watch Emily practice pirouettes on the porch. At dinner, Mason sat at the head of the kids' table while Eli and Sophie were shuffled to the side. My parents laughed the loudest at Mason's jokes, clapped hardest for Emily's stories. My kids grew quieter each day, their smiles thinning. By the fourth night, I couldn't stand it anymore. It happened after dessert. My mother had just finished bragging about Mason's math competition, first place. Can you believe it? Our golden boy. And my father was telling Emily how proud he was of her dedication. Eli was staring at his plate, pushing crumbs in slow circles. Sophie's eyes were downcast, her fork limp in her hand. Something inside me snapped. Enough, I said, louder than I meant. The table went silent. My parents blinked at me in surprise. Claire smirked again, clearly relishing the drama. You've made it painfully clear how you feel about my kids, I continued, my voice shaking with anger and something deeper, hurt, disappointment, maybe both. You treat them like they don't matter. Like they're less. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To constantly feel second best in their own family. Anna, don't be dramatic, my mother said, her tone sharp. We love Eli and Sophie. But Mason and Emily, well, they shine. It's natural to celebrate their successes. Celebrate, yes, but you ignore my kids. You push them aside. You put them in the basement like they're unwanted guests. My father's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. This is our house. We decide how things are arranged. And I decide, I shot back, that my children deserve better. We're leaving. There was a stunned pause. Claire let out a laugh of disbelief. Seriously, over a bedroom. But it wasn't just a bedroom. And my kids knew it. Their eyes widened, hope flickering across their faces for the first time in days. We packed that night. My parents tried half-heartedly to convince us to stay. Don't be ridiculous, Anna. Don't ruin the family trip, but I could see their hearts weren't in it. They didn't believe I would actually follow through. When Eli and Sophie carried their bags to the car, though, I knew I had made the right choice. The drive home was quiet at first. Then Eli whispered, "Thank you, Mom." Sophie reached for my hand and held it tightly the whole way. After that summer, things changed. I stopped forcing my kids into spaces where they weren't wanted. Holidays were at our own home, where Eli and Sophie's artwork hung on the walls and their laughter filled the rooms without being overshadowed. My parents complained, of course, about the distance I was creating. Claire accused me of being jealous, bitter, unfair. But I didn't care, because I saw something remarkable in the weeks that followed. Away from the shadow of golden grandchildren, my kids bloomed. Eli built a robot that won first prize at his school's science fair. Sophie illustrated a storybook and shared it with her class, earning praise from her teacher. And when they ran into my arms afterward, their eyes shining, I realized that what mattered most wasn't whether my parents saw their worth. It was that I did, and that I made sure they knew it. Still, the wound lingered. One afternoon, months later, my mother called me. "Anna," she said, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. "We've been thinking. Maybe we were too hard on Eli and Sophie. Maybe we didn't see them clearly." I wanted to snap back, to remind her of all the times they had been made invisible. But I thought of Sophie's tearful question that night in the basement. Why do Grandma and Grandpa like them more than us? Maybe, just maybe, my parents had finally realized the harm they'd caused. I hope so, I said carefully. Because they are incredible kids. And if you can't treat them with the love and respect they deserve, then we're better off apart. There was silence, and then my mother sighed. We'll try. I don't know if they will. Old habits die hard, but I know this. My children will never again be banished below, not in a lake house, not in life, not while I have breath in my body. They are my golden children, and I will spend every day proving it to them.